Don't forget that you're listening to Nightmare. This story is about what happened to me when I was a Mormon missionary. I had several paranormal experiences during those 2 years of service, from a building where we were always welcomed in and where children from the neighboring apartments would appear to play, to strange presences in our bedroom. Each experience was intensely terrifying. Maybe I'll share more details another time, but this time I want to tell you what happened to my companion and me on a nearby hill. After that event, my companion was never the same again. Some of you probably already know about missionaries, those young guys in white shirts and ties who go around in pairs, talking about God and the church, trying to help people who need a little faith in their lives. I had a new companion, a foreigner who barely spoke Spanish at the time, so it was hard for him to adjust. We lived in a small apartment at the foot of the hill that marked our area of work, from the base all the way up to the most remote neighborhoods. Sometimes we had to cross through a poorly maintained cemetery. There were open graves where you could see the coffins, an abandoned park, and crumbling walls, so people could cut through without walking around. It was often so deserted that people said it was dangerous, that muggings happened there. As usual, we were on our way to visit people who were interested in hearing us out. It was summer. I remember clearly because it marked 1 year of doing the same routine, hearing people mock us in the streets, knocking on doors where no one lived or the address was wrong. That day, we had just crossed the cemetery to visit a woman we were teaching along with her mother. Her house was near the top of the hill, and the streets were completely empty. It was daytime, so it was normal for people to be at work or school. As we climbed the street, we saw a man on the corner. It seemed like he was waiting for us. He introduced himself as Ivan. That's the name I'll use in this story, and he was crying. He said he needed God in his life, that he didn't know what to do since his wife had just left him. I'm a bit socially awkward, so I didn't even shake his hand. We started trying to comfort him and talk to him about the church. When we tried to schedule a visit, he said he'd show us where he lived. It was just a block away. As we walked there, he placed his hand on my companion's shoulder. My companion was only 19 at the time. I was focused on talking to the man since my companion barely spoke the language. But as we approached the house, I noticed my companion was crying. I didn't say anything until we arrived. Ivan said he would go in and check everything before letting us in. In English, I asked my companion if he was okay. Through tears, he told me, "I don't think we should go inside that house." Insensitive as I've always been, I asked why with an annoyed tone. He answered, "There's something wrong with him." When he put his hand on my shoulder, I felt a chill and a lot of fear. Still, I insisted. I thought, people rarely want to listen to missionaries, and this one came out of nowhere, a golden opportunity. I thought my companion was just being dramatic, maybe a spoiled kid, so I ignored him. But when Ivan led us into the house, I knew exactly what he had felt. The atmosphere was incredibly heavy. I wanted to cry, but I didn't let myself. I had to be strong for my companion. Ivan looked at us and said, "You feel it too, don't you?" I felt a chill crawl up my neck. That's what made my wife leave. The kids are still there. After hearing those words, I felt like I was going to die. The fear, the air, something was choking me. I wanted to run. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I turned around to open the door and leave, but Ivan shut it and stood in front of it. That's when I knew something was very wrong with him. He started screaming things we couldn't understand, but the way he screamed made our skin crawl. I tried to calm him down and stay composed, but I didn't know what to do. Something was watching us. From the room where he said his children used to sleep before his wife took them away. I could almost see it, something in the corner full of hate in its gaze. We prayed again and again, my companion too. The air was unbearable. We truly thought this might be the end. Eventually, Ivan calmed down. He moved aside, letting us leave. We told him we'd come back at the agreed time and date. He agreed. It took us a long time to recover. Later, we went to visit the woman we had originally planned to see. She welcomed us with food, not knowing what we had just been through. But what we didn't know was that everything was about to get even worse. Weeks passed, and we kept our promise to visit that man. We tried to go before sunset to avoid crossing the cemetery at night. It wasn't because of ghosts, but because of the crime so common in that area. At first, things seemed to improve. Sometimes we found Ivan drunk, holding pictures of his family. Sometimes he was fine. We even managed to get him to attend church once. We were excited to see progress in him, so much that we had almost forgotten what we had experienced. At least I had. One night, we were in a meeting with several Mormon missionaries. In the middle of it, my phone rang. It was Ivan. He said, "I can't take it anymore. Thank you for your visits, but I don't want to keep living. Tonight, I'm ending it all." After a long and desperate conversation, I managed to calm him down and asked him to wait for us, that we would come talk to him. We asked our superior for permission since it was very late, and the rules required us to be home by 9. We were far away, so our leader gave us a condition: find a church member with a car who could take us. Coincidentally, the only one available was the bishop of the congregation. We arrived at the hill. Everything was completely dark. No one on the streets, no one in the parking lot. Only the empty tombs and a figure of the Virgin, surrounded by burning candles. Silence. But the only thing that worried me was Yvonne, and that we might have come too late. I knocked on the door. No one answered. The place was pitch black. The bishop even asked if we were sure it was the right house. But I kept knocking. My companion looked very worried. Then someone opened the door. It was Yvonne, but it wasn't him. Yvonne had a very distinct accent. This man didn't. His voice was rough, confident. The eyes that had always been filled with tears were now filled with fury, empty. They say the eyes are the window to the soul. And it was as if someone had entered and taken everything inside. Ivan always looked hunched, defeated. This man stood tall, steady. "How are you?" I asked, seeing that my companion and the bishop were frozen in place. The man looked at me and said, "I'm not Ivan, but I know who you are. And you know who I am." He stood in the doorway. Inside, there was only darkness. "Yes, I know who you are," said the bishop, trembling. "You're looking for Ivan, aren't you? Let's go find him, though I don't think he'll come out." His invitation was strangely persuasive. For some reason, I wanted to go in. I didn't know why, but I knew I shouldn't. Something crushed my chest every time that being with dark eyes stared at me. My companion was crying. The bishop still said nothing. Even so, I spoke, despite the terror. "You asked us to come. We're here to help you," I said, wishing it was all a bad joke, but knowing deep down it wasn't. "Jorge, how pathetic you are. You can't even help yourselves." And then he called me by my name. We had never told him our names. We were only known by our last names. My ears started ringing as he repeated his invitation. "Come in. Let's look for Ivan. Let's see who wins." Something moved in the back of the house, as if it were walking slowly toward us, and I could feel on my skin that it was getting closer. One more step, another. When he realized my eyes were fixed on the darkness behind him, he laughed, a laugh that made us even more nervous. And in that moment, I clearly heard a firm voice whisper in my ear, "Leave now. Well, tell Ivan we stopped by. We're leaving. It's late. Goodbye." I said it jokingly because that's what I do when I'm nervous. I turned around. The bishop and my companion followed. The walk to the car felt endless. My jaw hurt from clenching my teeth. I felt a chill on my neck, but I didn't look back. We got in the car, and then I saw him, Ivan, watching us from an alley. The car started. We drove away, and then we saw it. Ivan ran out of the neighborhood, straight toward the cemetery. He entered through a broken wall. It was past midnight. We had been there for almost 2 hours, without realizing it, as if Ivan, or whatever that was, had stolen the time, the darkness, and the hill itself. And suddenly, as we left, the street came back to life. People, children, lights, cars. We were no longer alone with that entity, but I felt something was following us. Something came with us. No one said a word. Only the bishop spoke. He promised to return, prepared, with other authorities, to visit him. We reached the apartment and couldn't sleep that night. I felt someone else was in the room, watching us. And I was afraid that it would stay with us forever. Before dawn, I noticed tears running down my face. I finally allowed myself to cry. The next day, Mrs. Araceli scolded us. Someone had seen us at night in that dangerous neighborhood. We didn't say anything. We didn't want to. We didn't even want to go near Ivan's house. We took a taxi around the hill. We told everything to our superiors. 2 days later, I was transferred to another area. I never knew what happened afterwards, but remembering the state my companion was in, how generous he always was. I know he never again went near the cemetery, and much less Ivan's house. I want to share with you a story that dates back a few years and came to an end earlier this year with the events I'm about to tell you. My older brother has always been a big fan of horror movies and all kinds of paranormal investigation shows and reality programs. He even started a small project on YouTube with some of his college friends, where they visited supposedly haunted places. In addition to the classic spots everyone knows, they managed to visit a woman's house where she trusted them enough to let them spend some time there. It was said that the house was inhabited by at least 6 different entities. During their visit, they managed to record a voice and hear a door close, even though the woman was in the same room and they were certain no one else was in the house. After what they considered a great discovery, they were discouraged when the video didn't even reach 100 views. They decided to end the project. They deleted the video, the channel, and any trace of what they had tried. However, a few months later, I overheard one of them telling a story at a gathering with that same group of friends. He spoke about something that had recently come to his attention. A young man who worked as a waiter at a restaurant had had a rather peculiar experience. One night, after finishing his shift late, the weather was cold and the street seemed emptier than usual, as always. He had to cross a pedestrian bridge to catch his transport, but there was a section of the bridge that he found especially unsettling, a curve as he was going up where he always felt like someone could be hiding to observe him. That night, as he turned the corner, he came across a lump on the ground. It was the figure of a person, seemingly squatting, with their head between their knees and their arms wrapped around them. He asked if the person was okay, and that's when he began to hear crying. But the crying wasn't coming from the figure, it was coming from the branches of a tree behind him, which covered part of the ramp leading up to the bridge. The sound made him turn around, but he saw nothing. Suddenly, the crying stopped, and when he turned his gaze back to the squatting figure, he noticed that it was now staring at him. He could see its eyes glowing in the darkness, like those of a wild animal. Frightened, he ran down the ramp and returned to the restaurant. Just as he arrived, one of his colleagues was leaving, and after hearing what had happened, they both decided to go back to the bridge together. There was nothing there, but both of them felt a presence as they climbed the ramp, so they quickly descended. They didn't tell anyone else out of fear of being mocked. Days later, one night when they were out later than usual, one of the waiters, standing at the door of the restaurant where you could clearly see the bridge, nervously remarked how scary it would be to cross it. He said this while staring intently at the bridge. When they approached him, both the waiter who had the previous experience and an older man who worked as a car attendant noticed that right in the middle of the bridge, there was a figure, the silhouette of a woman, standing and watching directly, as if waiting for anyone brave enough to cross from the side they were on. The person telling this story at the gathering mentioned that he hadn't been in touch with the waiter since, and didn't know if anything else had happened. Everyone agreed that it would have been an excellent case to investigate if the old paranormal project was still going. 2 days later, on a Sunday with not much to do, they decided to go to the place just out of curiosity. All of them who had been part of the YouTube team went. It was already past 11 p.m. when they climbed the bridge and spent a good while recording audio, photos, and videos. Nothing unusual happened except for the suspicious look of the man who was watching the cars at a nearby restaurant. Deep down, they knew they weren't expecting to find much. I remember perfectly the look of unease on my sister's face and that of one of her friends when they came home that night. Apparently, their experience on that bridge had left them deeply unsettled. About a week later, I heard another story about that same bridge, once again through other people. I went out with my girlfriend, her best friend, and her friend's boyfriend to watch a movie and have dinner afterward. While we were talking, Alan, the boyfriend, told us something that had happened to his sister just a few days earlier. On a bridge near her school, she attended a nearby university, and her parents were waiting for her at a restaurant to have dinner together. That afternoon, for some reason I can't quite remember, she had stayed at school later than usual. As she was crossing the bridge just a few steps from her campus, she began to feel as if someone was beside her. At first, she thought it was just her imagination. Even though it was already dark, it wasn't that late, and cars were still passing by on the avenue. She didn't feel particularly nervous, but when she reached the middle of the bridge, she suddenly felt a tug on her hand, as if someone were pulling her toward the edge. Instinctively, she screamed and stepped toward the center of the bridge to feel safer, stumbling as she tried to free herself from whoever was grabbing her. When she fell and looked around, she was shocked to see that there was no one nearby. However, at the far end of the bridge, several meters away, she saw a woman standing still. That figure was the only one who could have pulled her, but something didn't make sense. If it had been her, she must have moved at an inhuman speed to reach the other end of the bridge in just seconds. Confused and terrified, she got up and ran down the ramp, not even stopping to warn a couple who were just about to cross from the opposite side. When she got home, she told her brother what had happened. He laughed it off as if it were a joke, but she knew she hadn't imagined it. It was the second time in a very short period that I'd heard stories about that same bridge. The feeling of unease was growing, and I began to sense something strange in the air too. That night, after dropping off my girlfriend, something inside me urged me to go to the bridge. I didn't know why, but a heavy sense of curiosity and uncertainty filled my chest. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why were these stories reaching me? What was really happening there? It's strange, but haunted houses or stories about possessions don't scare me that much, because in some way, you can free yourself from them by leaving, by moving away. What truly unsettles me are stories about entities trapped in public places people walk through every day without knowing what really lingers there. That night, I couldn't ignore it. I got in my car and drove to the bridge. I have to admit, I was nervous, though I tried not to overthink it. As I walked up the ramp, I felt as if someone were watching me, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. I crossed the bridge and saw a man walking quickly in the opposite direction. I didn't pay much attention to him. I stayed there for a while, watching a few tired workers cross on their way home, but I couldn't shake off that strange feeling, like someone was right behind me, breathing down my neck. Little by little, the fear started to build until I couldn't take it anymore. Something told me I needed to leave. I started walking faster toward my car. I don't know if you've ever felt it, that sense that something unseen is stalking you, ready to harm you. It was so intense that, as I walked, I could almost feel that at any moment someone might grab me and throw me off the bridge. I rushed down the ramp, got in my car, and started the engine. As soon as I pulled onto the main avenue and began to drive away, something strange happened. I looked in the rearview mirror, and for a brief instant, I saw the figure of someone standing in the middle of the bridge. I can't be completely sure if it was real or just my mind playing tricks on me, but at that moment, deep down, I knew that figure was watching me. As I drove farther away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Maybe that figure wasn't evil. Maybe it was just trapped, waiting for someone to notice it, someone to feel its presence. I truly feel sorry for those who have to cross that bridge alone. It seems as if whatever is there likes to make itself known when you least expect it. And hopefully, that was the last time I ever went back to that place.